Welcome to another podcast episode with Double Digit Angler. This is your boy Dom D in the house. I'm just introducing myself as Dom D from now on, just because my buddy that is into social media, he was just like, just be more confident, be more entertaining, throw your name out there like I don't know, like your French Montana. But we're gonna have on guest Rolando Nandin. It's gonna be a banger episode. He does both Hobie BOS and a few Texas local tournaments, as well as Bassmaster championships. But I'm going to ask him some valuable questions that kind of will tell his story in kayak bass fishing. And he's running late right now. He's going to jump in a little bit later, but let's just go over like all the champs this past week. It was a super busy weekend. It was the KBF Havasu Trail Series that was happening, the Pudding Stone tournament from Urban Angler, and the Slay Nation California tournament over at Millerton. And there was crazy stories happened. I heard about someone's kayak flipping and losing a lot of gear over at the Millerton event, which was crazy. Check it out. I think his name is Anthony Nordstrom. I could be wrong. I could be pronouncing his name wrong or getting it wrong, but check it out. If it's there, it's there. Anthony Nordstrom fishing on YouTube. He just I didn't get a chance to finish the whole entire video, but I saw him flipping a kayak and I was just like, whoa, he lost like 9 rods or something like that, which sucks. Yeah, it's Anthony Nordstrom. But since we have time, let's throw a shout out to Z Pro Lithium, serious power for serious anglers. If you guys need any batteries whatsoever, feel free to contact me or any of the sales team over at zprolithium.com. They're a serious supporter for me this year and in the past year, and if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be there. And I'm all about supporting companies that support all of the kayak community out there to really push on and make these dreams come true, and also just content create, for you guys. So if Z Pro didn't give me all these opportunities, I probably wouldn't even jump into podcasting or continue fishing at a tournament level over at Yakabass. But since Rolando Nandin's in the backstage right now, let's go ahead and bring him on. What up, Rolando?
What's up, Dominic?
Dude, you kind of look like Michael right now.
Look at that. Hey, I'm all Z Pro'd out right now.
Did you just get off from practicing for another championship?
No, not quite. But I got a couple other tournaments coming up that I got to get ready for too here pretty soon. So I'm trying to make Seminole. So
what circuit is that?
That's the Hobie one.
Hobie BOS, huh?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Damn, man. How do you do it? Did you just decide to go? Was this pre-planned?
For Seminole, actually, no. It all kind of depended how I was gonna do at the last Hobie event, because it would, if since I ended up pretty good, I obviously wanted it, put me in contention to be able to do the 4 for the AOI and make a run at it, So now that I can do that, and I have a friend of mine that's actually making it to Seminole. He lives right down the street from me, so I was like, man, now I got to make that so I can, we can both just tackle it right in one trip.
Yeah, for sure. So before the year even started, you didn't plan on fishing all of them unless you did well in the first couple of events, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the plan is to, fish as many close ones as I could. Right. And,
Right.
but now that, now that they made it 4 events, I needed to squeeze one more in because, Sam Rayburn and Cattle were close to me. And then which other one did I make? Oh, the Florida one was one that I made because my buddy that lives down the street or a few
Mhm.
about a couple miles from here was making the Florida one, and we're like, well, let's do it. So it ended up being one of those things where the year's like, you know what, let's just make a run at the Angler of the Year now since
Where are you at in the standings right now for Hobie BOS?
I haven't taken a look at it, but I have a Florida. I think I finished 23rd or something like that, or
Wow.
20 something.
Yeah.
Then of course I have Caddo, which I have a win on that, and then Seminole. If I could just finish, high. And Sam Rayburn, I feel good about that one. It's a little bit closer home lake, and I think I could do well on it. But you never know. But you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Just never know. But I mean, speaking of which, I wrote down this list of key words that I wanted to kind of really tackle. And one of them was momentum. Like, how do you carry that over? Like straight from, you said you finished 23rd, 24th over
Florida.
um
Yep.
at
The
Florida,
Harris chain. Yep.
right? And that was before Cattle, right?
Correct.
And then you go to Cattle, very next tournament, you said?
Right. It was the next tournament. Now, yeah, pretty much. I think it was the same month, I believe. Because,
Yep, same month,
yep.
and you smacked them. And then you go to the Bassmaster Championship and you near broke the top 10 just by one spot, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And I can tell you what, like, if you're breaking top 30s in every single event and getting a win here and there, like, that's pretty amazing. Like, I'll do that any day over 100 kayakers on one lake, right?
Yeah. No, it's tough, man. It does take I don't looking back at it, I don't even really think about it, right? I
Mhm.
look at each event and I just kind of just hone in on, hopefully that I do well on that one. But now that you put it in perspective, I was like, yeah, it's been a pretty good start to the year for sure.
Yeah.
So, but you know, uh, you have to go into you have to go into these tournaments not just wanting to cut a check, but wanting to win it. Like it's a real I don't know, man. It's hard to say because like I watch the pros and I watch the guys that do well and they talk and a lot of them talk about how they want to cut a check. And then you
Mhm.
watch like the guys that just are kind of like legends, KVD, Jason Christie. So you look at Buddy Gross, um, Polinick, and those guys have a real like they really want to win type of mentality. And
Yeah.
I try to take that approach as opposed to just instead of just showing up and saying, man, just gonna let the cards fall where they fall and hopefully it goes well. I feel like if I go in and I'm constantly in my mind striving to how am I gonna beat these guys,
Yeah.
and every day, like I go out, I go practice, and then I bring all my tackle back in, and that could be 10 rods or it can be 16 rods that I carry, right? Depends on how things are going in practice. But every day I'm re-rigging pretty much everything. And so like I go out
Wow.
to practice and I come back and I say, okay, I know I got bid, on these three things, but is there a better lure, right, that is going to get bit better? So but I also take out those three items that I already got bid on, right? So I go test, try to test those out, but then I try to find if I can find a bigger bite because my goal is always targeting bigger fish. Like I can go out and catch numbers if I tie on a little more finesse type of game. But I really resort the finesse game it's on the back end, right? It's like on the back burner. It's one of those things that I don't resort to unless I absolutely have to.
Right, right. Like if
And
you absolutely have to, and let's say you catch a 20 incher on a finesse bait during practice, then you're gonna be like, okay, maybe I'll give it a
yeah,
go, right?
right, right. But sometimes for me and my experience and my style of fishing, a lot of the times to me to target bigger fish, it's a different approach to the practice.
Hmm.
It's not just running bank all day long. you,
Yeah.
you know you got you gotta scan, and even though it's difficult to do that on a kayak, especially if you don't have a motor, Um, and I think you need a motor if you're going to change your style of fishing, because for me, I have to scan a lot, and I have to run. I create a milk run for myself for big fish. Like
Hmm.
I need to find big, look, areas where I know that they can, that it'll concentrate fish that are bigger, or, you know, so that I can have that milk run during the tournament, in case I run and get my top, my strength, my 5 fish limit, and then I start honing in on bigger fish.
How do you what's your approach on day one practice? What is your approach of are you just side scanning and you're not even getting a line wet first thing in the day? Are you like constantly side scanning, down scanning? Maybe not so much of down scanning over at cattle since it's majority just shallow.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
what are you doing? Your
well,
first approach.
before I go into practice,
Hmm.
I always research the lake, and I try to find areas that just, historically have good uh winds right on them, right? And so then I start there, and then I kind of break things down, and then depending if I see a lot of the field there or not, I take that into my equation and calculation of figuring
Hmm.
out if I'm gonna, okay, is it gonna hold up for 2 days based on the, how people are fishing. And I pay attention in my practice to see where most people are fishing, if I'm around a big population of people, right? I don't
Hmm.
necessarily try to think of trying to get away from the crowd too much sometimes, because that can hurt you, because
Hmm.
sometimes, regardless whether the crowd is there or not, like that could be the winning spot regardless of how many people are fishing it. And it just depends on how you gonna fish it. So if you constantly go in with the mentality of trying to get away from the crowd, that can hurt you, because I've done that before. And I feel like that, I have a friend of mine that I talk to, and we both always talk about it. And it's like, yeah, sometimes it's not good to think that way,
Yeah.
even though we don't like to fish around people. But
Hmm.
you know, I'll test areas that are far versus, areas that are just, saturated with anglers, and then determine whether if it's going to be beneficial to stay close or not. And but I think a lot of the pregame that you do before you get to the water eliminates a lot. You can eliminate a lot of water using your computer, the maps, right? And
Hmm.
figuring out how to cut that out, so that you don't go out on the water and run through a ton of dead water, right? And
Right. Right.
because we can't cover a lot of water like you can on boats. So I got to do a lot of pre-gaming before on the maps, and then I just select areas, and then I
Mhm.
go run those areas, and then figure it out.
Okay. That's good. That's a good tip. Are you so I practiced for the West Coast Championship over at Clear Lake and
Uh-huh.
I had like maybe 5 days of practice and I launched almost every single launch ramp at that lake. Because I mean it's not as big as Cattle, but
How big is Clear Lake? I
Clear
thought it was
Lake?
pretty big.
No, I think maybe it's like 15 miles across or something like that. So if you're
Yeah,
on a bass boat, you could go across the lake in like probably like 20 minutes or something like
got you.
that. 20 to 30 minutes if you're going fast,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, I can't remember. I want to say, I can't remember off the top of my head how many acres. It's easier reference for acreage, right? What the water coverage of acreage is, and I don't
Yeah.
know if it's 30,000 acres or not for cattle, but cattle, yeah, it depends on the lakes. But another good tip I think is, don't spread yourself too thin, right? 5 days of practice is awesome. If I could get 5 days of practice, I'd be doing the same
Well,
thing.
I mean,
Yeah.
what's the balance? Like what would you say is a sweet spot for like affordability and just enough to because you've proven you won one of the Hobie BOS events over at Cato. How many days of practice did you practice for that? And do you think it would have taken a little bit you would have been more comfortable with an additional day of practice or how do you feel about
Um, I feel like sometimes, well, I usually only get 2.5 days
it? Hmm.
on the national events.
Okay.
Um, I'll get if they're on Friday, or if it's Saturday and Sunday, I'll get that Thursday, and Friday is actually 2 days I get. Sorry, 2 days.
Okay.
If it sometimes I'll get 2.5 days, but mostly on average, it's 2 days of practice I get. Um, because I only get 2 days of practice, I
Mhm.
do a lot of map research before. So I
Okay.
I really need to dial that in, and I can't be going jumping ramp to ramp half days because
Yeah.
to me that doesn't benefit me because now I'm losing time on packing and unpacking and then moving the driving. To me, that's not efficient when you're kayak fishing, right?
Right.
So I do a lot of the map pre doing before, but and then you got to be smart about it because if you launch too far and you find two good areas, that could be bad because if one area doesn't work out, then you're going to
Mhm.
want to pack up and leave, right? So sometimes what I try to do is I try to fish very efficient and fast on day one, and then day two, if I'll go to a ramp that's somewhat close, but it's not quite close to get to it, that I can go if I get in trouble on spot one, I can still make the run to spot two
Via your kayak, right?
via the kayak. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and milk it that way, right? Coming back. But and then if that doesn't work out on day two and I'm like, hey, it's not, then you can pack up and go and just go to a completely different area. But
Yeah.
I usually try because 2 days of fishing those 2 day events, it's kind of hard to stay consistent if
Oh
you don't,
yeah.
to try to milk one spot. And
Mhm.
and then it gets risky because you do well on day one and you're like, man, do I go back to the same spot on day one?
Yeah.
That I day two, and then it doesn't work out. So, I won Toledo Bend last year, a Hobie event, which is also on the east coast of Texas, right, and border to cattle. And on that tournament, I fished one area on day one, and then I fished a completely different side of the lake on day two. Like I didn't even go back to my day one spot,
Oh,
and
and you won that.
I won that one. Yeah,
Wow, that's a magical story in itself. Like I almost want to talk about that story rather than that takes a lot of guts.
yeah. No, but what happened is in practice, I knew that place was good, and I knew that there was people like fishing it really heavily on the back end of the creek,
Mhm.
and right where it pinched going into it, right? But
Mhm.
nobody was really taking the risk out on the points, and I had found a really good area there with a bunch of laydowns that were like I want to say like 6 to 10 foot or something like that on a point. But that next day was going to be really windy, so I knew that nobody was going to be able to fish that. There was no way. The winds were like 40, 50-mile gusts with sustained 25. And it was brutally cold. And I was like, nobody's going to be able to fish that. So I was like,
On day 1, right?
on day one. Yeah.
So
So
day 2 you took advantage of that.
yep. And so I
Oh.
knew, well, day two, I couldn't even fish that, man. It was going to be too
Oh, okay.
difficult. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what I did is on day one, I went and I fished all of that, and I knew it was good because I had practice there. But that was going to concentrate on day two, all the people at the back of the creek.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're gonna cannibalize themselves, right? They're
Yeah.
gonna they're gonna be too many people. They're gonna all catch the same fish, and we're already gonna hammer them on day one. I was like, and I have a backup spot that's on the complete opposite end of the lake that you kind of have to go through rough water to get
Yeah.
to it, but it
Mhm.
gets calm. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do that. And then not only that, there was a um it wasn't. Oh, that's right. You have it. You actually were right. Day one was the bad weather, so I took advantage of
Mhm.
that on day one,
Mhm.
and then the weather came in, and we were able to fish the back. On day two, I already knew. I was like, that's not a big area. We were too many of us there. We really hammered it,
Mhm.
and I said, and it's cloudy. I mean, it's going to be sunny the next day, and I need docks. So I went
Mhm.
to a section of the lake that had a heavy concentration of docks, and I fished those, and it worked
Did
out.
did you were you first place on day 1?
On day one, I think I was in like third or fourth or something like that.
Oh, so you're like Polinick. You're like in
Yeah,
the back. You're just like, as long as I'm like third, fourth place, as long as I get a chance to win it on day 2, that's all I'm asking for,
yeah, and I
right?
knew day two was going to get hard. It was going to be difficult. So bluebird skies, that front had
Right.
come in. I was like, and there's no cover back there. I was like, these guys, the bank is not going to be good anymore. You're going to have to
Mhm.
rely to a little bit off, pulling off the bank. But I
Yeah.
was like, but these fish will stay on the bank if there's docks.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
100%.
so I just went to the docks and man, it worked out.
What type of when was it? Was the water temp in 60s?
Toledo Bend was also in February of last year.
Yeah.
So usually those water temps during that time of year, and then we had a really cold front come in. It dropped them down below the 60s. I think it got in the 50s,
Okay. So
upper 50s.
they were wanting to move up,
Right.
but then they were still kind of like feeding
Yep.
before the spawn.
Yeah.
Did you get them on a swim bait back then or
There's a combination of things, and actually, what really pulled the win for me on that event was a what do you call it, umbrella rig. I
Oh,
hardly Yeah,
nice.
I hardly ever throw an umbrella rig, but I was having trouble catching them day two as well, and I
Mhm.
pulled off a little bit, and I had found a lay down pretty deep, probably like in 15 foot of feet, and I started running that umbrella rig on those deeper uh, laydowns, and
Mhm.
was able to double up. I doubled up with the few minutes left to the end of the day. That gave me the
The
lead that I
lead.
needed. Yep, to be able to close it out.
Did both of those fish count?
Both of those fish counted.
Shut up.
Yeah.
That's an epic story. Did you
Yeah.
film that?
I can't remember. No, I don't think. I don't know. I think I got pictures of it, right? Because I took pictures of it, and where I
Yeah.
had both of the fish. I think one was like an 18, and the other one was like a 17-inch fish. But it was crucial because it was, that day was tough.
Man, that's the kind of stories that I would want, like, pros like yourself to document so that, the
You can
people
see
get
it,
more
yeah,
thrilled because like it's those dramatic times that really make bass fishing like what it is. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah,
that live, like I think Chris Lane did it a few times with Jacob Wheeler, where it's like very last second, like he just brings in a fish and wins $300,000. Granted, we're not doing $300,000 tournaments, but I feel like that's the content like that drives people to keep on watching, some of
yeah,
this channel. But that's like even hearing it on my podcast, like your story of doubling up and both fish counted.
yeah.
What was it, like a 5-inch coal? A
Yeah,
4-inch coal?
it was like a man, I want to say it was about a 4 or 5 inch coal, and and we were neck to neck. I think it was Cody. Is it Cody
Cody
Milton?
Milton? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Cody Milton. And is it Cody Milton? I can't remember his last name. I think it is Cody
Yeah.
Milton.
Yeah.
Um, Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me check to see if it's the right Cody. No, it's Cody Henley. Cody
Oh,
Hen
it's Cody Henley.
Yeah, Cody Henley was the one that was right behind me, and he had every time I caught a fish and I cold and took over first, he would coal and take over
He would
again.
he would answer right
He would
back.
answer right
Yep.
back. Yep.
Yep.
And I was just like, goodness gracious,
Yep.
I can't get ahead here. And and I knew it when I got those two fish. I was like, ooh, it's unless he catches like a 20 or something, I was like, it's gonna be tough.
Yep.
And there was very little time left after that. So
That's a great story. Oh my gosh. Doubled up
yeah.
on an A-rig for 5-inch coal,
Yeah.
man.
The funny thing is I got back, and Cody was like, "Man, I saw when, right before they cut off the leaderboard, you know, um and when I found out, he's like, you must have when he found out that I had won, he was like, you must have doubled up." And I was like, "Exactly, dude." I was like, "I actually did
Oh,
double up."
wow. Dang. Was he fishing next to you or was he fishing near
No, he
the
was he was way on the opposite end of the lake.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't fishing next to me, and I just met him, when I went back to the meetings, the captain meeting.
Yeah.
We just kind of chit chatted for a little bit, and
What
he
kind
was
of do you don't have similar fishing styles, do you?
no, Cody is he's a chatterbait and shallow fish fisherman expert. Cody,
Mhm.
he throws a variety of things. He's obviously he was on a run last year doing really well. So I knew I had my hands full trying to
Yeah.
freaking, Cole, because he's proven to be pretty good, and
Mhm.
he throws swim baits, he throws chatter baits, and
Yeah. You
he's
can't get
he's
enough of those mag drafts. He throws mag drafts religiously
yeah.
and chatterbait.
Ironically, the mag draft has been really good to me. I threw it up in Chickamauga. This caught me a
Mhm.
key fish, and then on the way back from Tennessee, I stopped at a local tournament that is my local trail, and I I started my day with that mega mag draft,
Mhm.
caught 3 key fish in the morning with that, and then it was bluebird skies, so it got a little tough and had to resort to
Yeah.
other things, but.
Are you usually throwing that thing like alongside a dock?
Yeah, yeah, skip
Okay.
it or throw it alongside the dock or in between docks. You find grass.
Yeah.
I'll throw the freestyle one, and I'll find like that hay grass that we call it down here. Um, but pretty much any grass you could throw it up in there, and you know, I usually have it like on an underspin, an oversized like owner beast hook.
Oh, okay. What's the trick to it? From keeping it foul hooking. Do you throw the line through as well for the docks?
So no, I don't throw the line through. I started experimenting with the line through a little bit, but I haven't really used it a whole bunch. But I throw
Mhm.
the owner hook, the underspin that you
Yeah.
can use for that. I think is a 6/0 that you use for that 6-inch mag draft.
Right.
Um, and that one is pretty good. I mean, my hookup
Okay.
ratio is really good on that. I throw it on 20-pound test line. Uh, but recently I kind of dialed it in because I was losing some fish on it. My
Mhm.
drag, I've the combination of my reel, the line, because what's crazy is that on fluorocarbon you don't really think of stretch too much, but when you're throwing those big baits and they're
Mhm.
far out, man, you could really feel that stretch,
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
that heavy weight, so like I was losing a couple of fish, and it was in combination of my drag not being tied down, not being locked down enough.
Right.
So like a big fish would grab it, and most of the time you're floating forward anyways because you're on the kayak, and then by the time you get caught up to try to swing, if your rod was in position right, you didn't have that room to really get that good hook set.
Drive that hook. Yeah.
Yeah, because that hook is a thick gauge, man, and so
Right.
like um you get to those 5-6 pounders and bigger fish, that plate is really hard to drive that bigger hook. You got to really
Got it.
give it to them. And I noticed that it was due to my drag. It wasn't tight. And now I lock it down and I give it to them really good. And then whenever I'm fighting them, if I have to, I'll back off on the drag and just kind of let them. But I
Right.
don't. I really don't give them any. I don't play them. I just
No.
I horse them in.
Yeah. I would do the same too.
Yeah.
If it's off a 6-inch HUD for sure. If it was off a glide bait,
Yeah, because those
give them.
treble hooks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another technique that
Mhm.
should be pretty good here coming up, with all this you got to change your hooks out, and try like those quads and things like that.
Yeah.
Um
Have you fished? I've been always dying to go out, make it out to Texas, kind of break a in the 10-pound mark, you
yep.
know? Um, have you fished OHIV? You probably get this question a lot.
Dude, I know, and it's crazy that I have not. I've
Mhm.
never fished OHIV. The one time that I had the ability to do it, I don't know, I had some obligation and I couldn't make it
Yeah.
to one of my local tournaments. And
Mhm.
I mean, they killed it, right? That lake has been producing, and it's been a hidden gem for years before it even blew up.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I haven't been able to, but I'm actually trying to schedule it in so that I can get
Mhm.
out there and go live scope it, you know?
Yeah, what's your biggest fish right now?
9/8. I have
Oh, so you're in the same boat as me. Like
yeah,
we're
9/8. Yeah, dude, it's kind of embarrassing because you live in Texas, right? And it's like, geez, dude, you should have a 10 by now. But
But you
uh
probably have multiple sevens, multiple eights, like
yeah, I got
all the time.
tons of 7s and 8s, dude. And
Yeah.
you know, I probably got 3 or 4 nines, that
Yeah.
if they would have been caught at the right time, they would have been 10s. Because I
Yeah,
have
I feel
mhm,
don't you feel like you were kind of ripped off a little bit?
yep, yep, yep. I've caught I think the last one I caught was 26 inches. and it was
Oh
skinny,
my
man. It was
gosh.
so skinny, and it didn't even make it, and I was like, dang.
Did it look
So
not good? Like, did it look like it was on its last year?
no, it was, it didn't look that bad. It was not fat. I don't know if it had just spawned, or I don't know what the deal was, but most of the ones I've caught that were close to 10 were actually in that 24 and a half to 25-inch mark. They were
Yeah.
fat, but
Right.
they weren't, that sometimes they can be a little bit more fatter than, here in Texas. A lot of
Yeah.
these lakes have so much shad and so much food, man.
Mhm.
They get pretty round.
Yeah. It's
uh
weird. It's sometimes the long ones don't don't get heavy,
yeah, they
s-
don't.
but sometimes the like I saw I think Mike Gilbert from SoCal, he caught a 12 pounder and it was only 25,
Yep.
25.25. I was just like, wow, that's odd. Maybe I should catch shorter fish.
Yeah, no, and that usually, like, if you go to river systems, they tend to
Yeah.
be long, but that current, they really work at it, and so it keeps them slim. I think
Mhm.
it's kind of like being on the treadmill all day. Those poor fish with
Yeah.
that current.
Well, we have a guest on. Well, we have someone in the comments asking, like, what's your go-to bait for fishing docks?
Fishing docks. Well, if it's in the pre-spawn, man, it's usually, I do like a jig, and I'll use like
Mhm.
more of a lighter wire hook jig, a little bit more compact,
Okay, like a finesse
like a
jig.
finesse, not too finesse to where it's not like a
Yeah.
Kitech one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll use that, but I do. I mean, I'm loving the mag draft around the docks.
Or an A rig. Would you throw a rig alongside a dock?
Man, I
No.
I don't like throwing the A rig. Not a
No.
big fan of it.
Yeah.
Here we can use it with 5 hooks, right?
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, Texas allows it, right? But
Wow.
I don't know why, but I just not a big fan of it. But I do
Yeah.
know that, I own them, of course. And if
Mhm.
if it's if it's one of those things where it's the deal, and you're hearing the doc talk, and of course you try it out once in a while, I'll throw it. But I don't know why. I just really don't like the A rig. And it's not because it doesn't have the effectiveness that I used to have when it first came out, where
Mhm.
it was just you pretty much get it around any fish and it would bite. I think they're getting a cut there. It's still, don't get me wrong, it still catches fish pretty good, but definitely not like it used to.
Yeah, it's kind of like a spinner bait in my mind.
Yeah.
It's like an over large spinner bait,
Yeah.
and some days they'll eat the spinner bait, sometimes they'll eat the A-rig, or sometimes they'll eat both at the same
Right.
time. But, like, that spinner bait, like, you could stick it in the cover so much better than an A-rig sometimes.
No, for sure. For
Yeah.
traditional baits around docks, I'd say, I like to use a jig and sometimes I'll throw a shaky head. But
Mhm.
for non-traditional stuff, like when things aren't working out,
Yeah.
I have my jerk bait all year round.
Oh, okay,
And
so
yeah,
before we get to Shane's questions about the Bass Mafia dangerous swim bait, I'll bring it back up, Shane. But my thing, all right, so I haven't had like an expert jerkbait fisherman on my podcast. I want to know how you fish a jerkbait. What are you using? What are your best times with a jerkbait? Like what time of the year? Because I kind of
um,
want to help my viewers just catch tons of fish on jerkbaits, and for myself as well.
yeah, well, here's the deal with jerk baits. If you if you're just using jerk baits without the assistance of live scope, it's a fish catcher. You're gonna catch a lot of fish,
Mhm.
um, and then you'll end up throwing the shallow ones, right? You have the plus ones, and then you get plus twos where they tend to get deeper, right?
All right.
And during the pre-spawn, I like throwing it in the spring, and it works for me really good in early spring, especially when the weather's is constantly changing in the early spring. Right, you're getting rainy days, cold fronts.
Mhm.
Um, it plays a role really good during that pre-spawn deal. In the fall, of course, it's a big deal, and winter. But my best times is obviously the fall, where it's known going into the winter, where I think it plays really, really good. But I use it and I catch a lot of good quality fish with it because I combine it with my live scope. And with the live
Mhm.
scope, you can target fish directly, right? So you're able
Right.
to see fish like, you'll find crappie, um, what do you call it, brush piles, and
Mhm.
those big fish love to hang around sometimes, to see if they can snag one up, and you can see them when you get good with live scope. You'll be able to identify big bass. You'll be able to see that's a big bass, that's a big drum, or that's a carp, and you'll know, and you can put it right next to them, and most likely, if they're in a feeding mode, they're gonna hit that thing coming by.
Yeah.
So that one thing is you to just because the jerk baits for the longest time, we've known that they've always caught fish, but it didn't get blown up until the Bassmasters event, where what's his name, Patrick Walters, um,
Mhm.
pretty much was doing that, right, scoping fish out of the trees, and he was catching big fish. And then they
Mhm.
realized the potential of that jerk bait, and that when you think about big fish and jerk baits, it's because it's being combined with live scope.
Yeah.
You can't just run a bank with the jerk bait and expect to be catching 25 30 pounds a bag. Like
Yeah,
it's
usually it's a small fish catcher too. Like you'll
Yep,
catch tons of fish before you go off a 4 and 5 pounder sometimes.
exactly, right,
Yeah.
kind of like the wacky, right? You catch a lot of
Mhm.
fish on it, but if you're going to catch big fish, it's very specific. And that's the
Yeah.
one thing I tell people about jerk baits. That's like, it you just have to have the right tools and know when to use it and when not to use it. And for me, I use it around brush piles, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
around, and things that where I can identify that I've already scanned things and I've already scoped them, and I'm like, oh, there's big fish here in this area, oh, there's big fish here in this area, but I'm not running grass lines with it, right? I'd rather
Yeah.
run grass lines with throwing a mag draft, because you're if you're gonna cover water
Mhm.
and you're not going to use a live scope, you're better off throwing like a 6-inch mag draft and throwing a jerk bait to get a quality bite.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. You could draw a bigger bite from a huge grass line versus a jerk bait. Man, you're gonna be attracting almost every single fish from that grass
Yeah,
line.
exactly.
It's
And
almost like a filter, right?
exactly, it's a
Yeah.
filter. So you throw, your bigger spinner baits, jackhammers naturally catch bigger fish.
Mhm.
Um, so you have to understand the lures, and you have to understand the time frames to throwing them and when not to, right?
Yeah.
Cattle, it was a tough bite on day 2, and I
Mhm.
wasn't catching any more fish. And so I had to go to something to get them to react to. And the jerk bait has always been known for one of those, you paw, and you get struck, you get striked on the paws.
Mhm.
And what people need to understand about big fish, like 6+ pounders, I mean, that's a big fish, 6+ bigger. They observe their food more, and you'll learn this when you use live scope. When you're
Mhm.
using live scope, you're gonna see big fish nosing up on your baits. They act differently than the what's so called, quote, the buckfish, right? The smaller
Mhm.
fish. The smaller fish tend to just react. They see something coming and they bite it.
Mhm.
Your bigger fish are not going to do that. So you're going to the jerk bait is only going to work when the conditions for visibility are low. That's
Mhm.
when you're going to trigger a bigger bite from a fish. If you have like calm, dead, flat, what do you call it, bluebird skies and
Yeah.
no wind, that jerk bait's probably not going to work as good for you. And especially if the water's clear,
Yeah.
they're gonna get a good look at it, and they're most likely gonna get a lot of followers and just get upset, and it's
Right.
yeah, and it's gonna keep you there wanting to do that, but you know that in those times, if you want the jerkbait to work in those kind of conditions, you have
Mhm.
to move it extremely fast. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. I
Right,
see
and
what you mean.
you gotta create a reaction out of them.
Don't give them a chance to look at it,
Don't give them a
pretty
chance to look at it.
much.
Yep.
Yeah. I see what you mean. And there's so many times when I'm on live scope too, where there's big fish that just come up to your bait, examine it,
They
and they
do.
just they take their time. They're literally like a foot away from it, just looking at it.
Yep.
And they're
Yep.
just like, man, not today. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of local fishermen around Texas here that they fish so slow, And if you ever look at their monthly like tournaments that they compete in,
Mhm.
they got giant bags. And I'm like, dude, how do they catch, you know, like 113, 116 inches,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of times they're dragging stuff and they're waiting forever for this fish to bite because it
Mhm.
just sits there and it follows the bait. And then finally, when it feels like it wants to, like, okay, maybe it's real, they'll strike at it. And that's just the reality of fishing for big fish. Now in tournaments, it's hard to do that because you're on a time crunch, right?
Right.
So, you have to make them bite. You got to see what they want.
Right.
And that's when I pay attention to the conditions and the day calls for, like, the minute I know that there's wind and there's low and there's cloudy, it's going to be cloudy.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and drag a worm, dude. You're wasting quality time
Right.
of you going down a bank and producing a bigger limit faster, right?
Right.
Than
Throwing
you
a
are.
soft jerk bait, throwing something moving
Yep.
real fast, you know?
Yep.
Exactly. Kind of take advantage of that low light hour.
Yeah, you have to.
Um, Yak Local is asking any tips without live scope with the jerk bait. Like, is it just cover a lot of water at that point, or?
Well, like what I did on Cato, for example, trees,
Mhm.
right? You don't really need the live scope. You can cut, you as long as you know the
Yeah.
depth, right? And you know
Mhm.
how deep the jerk bait goes. You
Mhm.
can you can use it around structure as long as you know how deep your jerk bait goes. Without the live scope, I would recommend using it on points. Like if you have a long point that is
Right.
going out and it's only going to like to 6 feet, or you have a drop off, you're gonna want to fish that jerkbait right before that drop off, coming off of it, right? If it's too deep, if it's 15 feet, um, it's got to be super clear water for them to come
Right.
from that far distance. I mean, because I have seen them come from 20 feet up to 10 feet, travel a 10-foot difference just to come and investigate the jerkbait. But this got to be crystal
Right.
clear water. You know what I mean?
And a
But the
plus two, right? Nope.
and you want to get to that at least, where if you're gonna fish it over 20 feet of water, let's say,
Mhm.
you want it to be at least around that, close to that 10-foot range where it's
Yeah.
getting down there to the 10, because they will travel that 10-foot range and they'll see it in
Mhm.
that clear water. I mean, their visibility is actually pretty good in that clear water. But the key thing is that my success with the jerk bait is because I throw it in all kinds of clarity. I don't
Mm.
just throw it in clear water. Like I can throw it in visibility that's a foot and a half, but that's because I can put it right on them and buzz them with the where they'll react to it. You know what I'm saying?
Have you had success with muddy like water or foot or less using live scope in a jerk bait?
Yeah. Usually the stopping point for that for me is like max is like a foot and a half. I
Oh,
don't.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. A foot and a half is about as much as I would want to use it. Anything less than that, it's really tough,
No.
and
Yeah.
it's really inefficient. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
I see. Yeah, yeah. You
Yeah, it's
rather throw
just
something on bottom or spinner bait or a
yeah.
square bill or something.
Unless I know they're loaded somewhere. Or like if they're loaded
Yeah.
somewhere and they're on the bottom, then you can get a jerk bait that's
That
gonna
will
be
get them to rise up.
really close to that bottom though,
Oh, I
right?
see.
But if they're stuck to the bottom and they're really close to the bottom,
Yeah.
because most of the time when it's dirty water, they're not suspending, like, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
they're gonna
They're
be
on
next to some,
bottom.
they're on
Yeah.
bottom or they're on
Yeah.
next to something.
Yep.
So you can use the jerkbait without a live scope in a little bit more dirty water if you're around
Mhm.
structure, if you're good with your accuracy, right? Your casting abilities,
Right.
where you can put it where you want. That, when you want to do that, then your combo is pretty crucial to that, because now you're talking about a light rod that's short, that has the right
Right.
tip
The right
fluid,
action,
the
right?
right action, because then that'll allow you to be super accurate to putting it exactly where you're at.
What are you
Um,
throwing over at cattle to make sure you're hitting that left of the tree, you're hitting the right of the tree, and you're hitting in the front of the tree? What?
yeah, I posted not to. Well, I think it was I think it was yesterday. I posted a
Mhm.
little deal on my Instagram, and it kind
Yeah.
of showed what I was doing. Um, and I'm casting to both sides of it, right?
Right.
And when the tree limbs are like super low and I can't get underneath it, then
Mhm.
I'll cast past it, right,
Mm-hmm.
off to the side of it, and then I'll shift over to
Right.
where.
You'll use your rod tip kind of to direct wherever you're
Yep.
jerking.
Yeah,
Right.
but my accuracy is really good with that rod. I've been using it for a long time, and it's a custom build rod, and it's really good. I have micro guides on it, and it
Mm-hmm.
allows me to. It allows for very less line slap and just really precise cast. I don't like micro guides on anything else, but on that jerkbait rod, I've noticed that I can really cast accurate with that. So that I do
Mm-hmm.
like. Um,
Are you doing 10-pound tests, 12-pound tests?
Nah, predominantly 12. 10 you
12.
when you talk about the 10 pound is if I'm in open water and it's crystal clear.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise it's always 12.
What's the perfect rod length on a kayak?
7.
7. You go
Mm-hmm.
7 for jerkbait.
Yep, 7 foot. I don't do a
No.
610. A
No.
610 was a
Okay.
good because you're not really going be able to jerk it in a downward motion unless you're standing up like in a boat, you have
Mm-hmm.
that space. But most of the time you can't do that, you know what I'm saying? And if you
Yeah.
do that, you can do it down, but you got to put a lot of time in practice so that your line slack is right
Mm-hmm.
compared to where your stopping point is at for the tip of your rod, right, to not hit the water there.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you jerk it downwards, that's how you get the depth out of the jerk bait.
Right.
If you do it sideways, you don't really get it to go at its full potential, right?
Right.
But but then that's where the angler skills come into play, right? You know if you need to use a +1 and if you can get away with it based on
Mm-hmm.
whether how deep you are or the structure you're trying to fish.
Yeah.
So, it's like when you're cranking, right? And cranking, they tell you dredge the bottom, right? You gotta have crankbaits have to be hitting something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're gonna be cranking 10 feet of water, like I throw crankbaits that dive, I'll get a 5XD if I'm
Mm-hmm.
fishing that 10 feet of water because sometimes you can't get that bomb cast, and I want that sucker to be already on the bottom as quickly as possible.
Right. And a lot of those crankbaits, whatever they're marketed on the package, they don't dive that deep usually.
No, and the
Yeah.
marketing package is usually based on 10-pound line.
Yeah.
And most of us don't throw, I don't throw 10-pound line
Yeah.
most of the time. I throw 12 and or
Mm-hmm.
15 if it's a bigger crankbait, right? If it's
Yeah.
a much deeper diving crankbait.
I mean, 10,
So
10-pound snaps like no other. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it just depends. And I don't
yeah.
feel like it's my jerk baits. I throw it around a lot of wood and
Mm-hmm.
and structure the way I fish it. And I need that 12. I need that extra. There's times where even pros where I've heard like at Harris Chain when they're fishing it very shallow, like in that 5 foot
Mm-hmm.
range, and they're floating it, they'll throw it on 17-pound test line because they're trying to keep it. They're fishing it very shallow, and they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep it up. Right,
Yeah.
the heavier the line, the less likely it's going to pull that line down deeper.
Almost like a subsurface jerkbait,
Yep.
sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, and a jerk bait without live scope is also you can be real successful in the shallows if you upsize your jerk bait, right? They sell bigger ones
Mm-hmm.
and you upsize the line so that you're not getting hung up and hitting the bottom with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do know like some of these Japanese anglers um will fish shallow and they'll up their line to 17-pound and it's somewhat stained water, but they'll
Mm-hmm.
fish it shallow,
Like
you
2
know,
feet of water, 3 feet of water or
yeah,
something,
3 feet
right?
of water or around grass, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you'll have to up your hooks on it so that you can actually also pull on them, right, to pull
Yeah.
them away from that grass or anything like that. Because if they get you into something with all those trebles, it then it becomes a problem and you can lose them like that.
Damn, that's some juju right there.
Yeah, the treble they're a pain, dude, to fish them like the way I do because it
Mm.
I throw them around a lot of stuff and if you're not really good with the accuracy of it, it becomes inefficient because you're constantly getting hung up.
Yeah, especially around the cypress knees.
Yeah, you get hung up a lot, and if you don't know that you don't jerk it down, you got to jerk it up, right, to
Yeah.
clear something, right?
Yeah.
Then you'll end up, and then if your castability, your accuracy is not on point, you end up on trees,
Mhm.
and then here's the other thing is I fish everything pretty much for the most part against the wind. So
Yeah.
if and I fish that jerk bait is magic when it's super super windy.
Yeah.
So if you can't cast against the wind,
Hmm.
then you're dealing with backlashes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Do you use a DC or what do you use for
I
throwing
my my combo setup is a 7 foot medium moderate fast.
Hmm.
It's a custom rod. It's a North Fork blank. My buddy here in San Antonio makes them.
Hmm.
So I had him made them, and he put on some really good guides because I end up breaking the stock guides on my kayak all the time because I
Hmm.
carry so much crap, you know.
Yeah.
And then I throw that on an Aldebaran MGL.
So that's
Um,
no DC. There's no digital braking system,
no,
but it's
but it's a
smooth.
shallow spool. It's
Yeah.
super smooth, and it's designed for light baits. The Aldebaran.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like with a shallow spool, you don't get some. You don't want to be throwing a jerk bait with a 200 size.
No, it just feels too much like this.
It's too much. It's too much
Yeah.
weight. Yeah. You want to throw it like on one of those, 100 or
75
yeah,
maybe.
75. Yep. I can't
Yeah.
remember the Aldebaran if it's a 75 or 100, but it's a shallow spool.
It's not 150 or 200, that's for
Nope.
sure.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not. And the whole combo is super super light. It's like
It's
paper
like
light, man.
heaven. That's probably like half of the satisfaction you get from fishing
Yeah.
it, huh?
Yeah, and you can hold it, you could throw it all day long without getting tired because when I first started jerkbaiting like heavily in 2017, I had a setup and man, I had that pump that you get on
Yeah.
your forearm.
Yep.
Man, it
Yep.
was so bad. Like I had to stop, you know,
Yeah.
and it would hurt for weeks. I know there was a time frame that I had that pain for months
Yeah.
from having the wrong setup.
It's a
And
sharp pain too, right?
it's a very sharp pain on your
Yeah.
forearm. And I was like, man, I'm just when you're caught up fishing, you don't even feel it, right? Because you're catching fish and you're all
Yeah.
freaking. But the next day, you're like, holy crap, man, that's like you really feel it, you know. But that pain went away when I dialed in my setup.
Yeah. So okay, so we talked about this is like a master class of jerkbait fishing. But let's talk about like the biggest differences that you've seen, positive or negative, between Bassmaster Championship or Bassmaster event and Hobie BOS. Like what were the major differences and were there like big differences or
The both the organizations, I think, and I'm just talking about this year.
Mhm.
They're being ran by two people that I think are really um, really dedicated to the kayak angler. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Bassmasters, they're, I only fished like a handful of events the past, they just started what 2 years ago, I think now.
Mhm. I
And
think so.
there people had certain complaints about, they really wouldn't cater to us and they didn't give us a treatment. But man, this year, Steve, I think
Steve
it's
Owens.
Steve
Mhm.
Owens. Yeah, man, he has really done a great job. Easy to communicate, quick payout. They do direct deposit,
Oh
to or
wow.
not direct deposit, but direct to your PayPal real quick. Before I think they would send a check out. I think it was a couple of years ago, and it would take a while. Hobie does the same thing where it's ACH, right? It's direct deposit to your bank
Bank
account.
account.
Yep.
Okay.
So they do it pretty quick too. Um, as far as negative stuff this year, man, I really can't say it other than the fact that I wish they were closer. But
Yeah.
but other than that, I really encourage people to get involved because they're being ran the way they're supposed to be.
Mhm.
When you have that much money involved, AJ and Steve, they're strict and sticking to the rules, and people need to understand that when you step from a local event into a national event, you gotta abide by those rules. And
Mm.
sometimes when you get caught up fishing local events so long, you're like, oh, what's the big deal, about this? And it's a big deal because if you want to get in that level, it's now about you and your skills, not about oh, I'm sharing information here and there. Like I like the strictness that's being implemented because it's now a true competition. It's your skills against that other person's skills, not like how can I find a competitive edge by talking to a local guide and putting me on
Right.
fish, right? Or
Right.
someone doing something during the tournament. Like if I'm in a tournament and I'm not figuring things out, I like the fact that you can't communicate with another angler to try to figure it out because to me, that's not your skill anymore.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah,
You know what
I
I'm saying?
I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, it's like I go out and I put my best effort up forward against all your skills and I would
Mhm.
and I want the same, right? I don't want you to have a competitive edge during those time frame, those those hours where it's supposed to be just what you can figure out.
Right.
And both organizations are doing a great job, I think, of you know getting that tie down and making sure that every angler is going out with their with whatever they can bring to the table.
Right. Right. 100%.
And so no negative, man. I really
Yeah.
can't say anything bad about them. I enjoy both of them just as equal.
Nice.
So
Next question is, what electronics do you run and what Z Pro batteries do you recommend? Uh,
so I run Garmin and I have a 106 SV, which is a
mhm,
10-inch screen. Um, and then right now I have two Z Pro batteries, which are the 12 volt 30 amps, and
mhm.
I have them bridged
To 60 amp.
to 60 amps. Yes.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I bought like one of those ammo cans that you can
Hmm.
buy like at it's a plastic one. They sell them, they sell
Oh,
smaller
ammo
ones. Or
cans. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I opened those up and I took a little bit of the top off because sometimes it has like this line like these little fins inside. I don't know what you call them,
Yeah.
right? So when you close down, it doesn't hit on top of the battery. So I hollowed that out and I bridged them together in there. So I created the 60 amps. So everything is powered by the 60 amps. My 106 SV Garmin
Mhm.
and the black box though the LV36, which is the
34
newer.
or is there a
Sorry,
36 now?
no,
34, right?
34. Yeah, because the
34.
32 before 34.
Right.
The LV34, and that actually will power you all day.
Mhm.
But I think Z Pro's coming out with a 16 amp, aren't they?
I hope so.
I
I haven't
not
heard
not
that one
not
yet.
not not 16 amp, 16 volt. Sorry,
Oh, yeah,
16
yeah.
volt.
And
I
then you
think
plan on powering your black box just with the 16 volt?
yeah, well, I think our units can take 16 volts. The black
Oh, really?
box and and the live scope. I believe if I was looking at the manual, I thought that the units can take a 16 volt, and I think that was the max. Um,
Nice.
I'm
So it'll
not
be more
sure.
efficient, more maybe more clarity in the live scope.
That's what I hear. I'm not exactly
Yeah.
sure case. My live scope's pretty darn clear, man. I can
Yeah.
cast on my Garmin. I see my jerk bait out 85 feet. I can confidently say 90 plus feet. I would need a bigger lure, like you know what I'm saying.
You need
Just
a rig
like an A
or
rig, yeah.
yeah.
But I can see my smaller jerk baits out at 85 feet,
Mhm.
especially if they have metallic in it. Anything that has metallic in it
Mhm.
tends to come up a little bit better on the screens.
Did you come from the 90 the LV32, LVS
Yep,
32?
yep.
Do you say is it a massive upgrade?
I wouldn't say a massive upgrade, but I will tell you that you can see your baits at 85 feet pretty about I'd say 35% to 40%,
Clear.
35% better.
Okay.
The clarity of 50 foot and less, I think, is the same between the two. It's
Okay,
when
so it's that extra
it,
30.
it's that extra 30 feet out that I
I
think
see.
that LV34 is better
Okay.
because I can pick up things a lot better past that distance, which is crucial for me because of my, you know, jerk baiting. If I'm throwing out, I try not to get too close to things, right? Try to keep that
Right.
distance, and usually I can cast that pretty far, at that
Mhm.
100 foot mark, past
Oh,
that 100 foot
easy.
mark. Yeah.
Yeah, easy. Is there anybody that you would like to thank for like all the opportunities that you've had in this
Yeah,
year?
man. Well, obviously, I only got three. I need to work on my sponsors, man, because
Same here, same here.
I have like, I go to these national events, and these guys have like all these stickers, right, from all the people that get sponsored and stuff. But
Mhm,
I only got, Z Pro, of course, right, that
mhm.
really helps me out with the batteries, and that's a huge, because lithium batteries get expensive. So
Yeah.
um, and I've had zero problems, and that's a big plus. I've heard other competitors where I've been on the water or at the Brampton. They're like, "Hey, dude, this freaking thing died on me 3 hours into it."
Mhm.
I'm like, "Man, I'm glad I don't have those problems." With
Yeah, and
all,
you got the right batteries too. A
yeah,
lot of people, like for instance, me, I'll tell you straight up, like I had a lot of issues when I switched over from the 93 SV to the 106 SV. I thought it was like plug and play,
no,
but
it
nope.
draws more power.
It draws a lot of power.
Yeah, yeah, you start getting
And
that high definition and more pixels, and
yep,
yep, it definitely drains the batteries a lot more. You got to up your amps.
yep. And I tell everybody like make sure you ask like one of the pros over at Z Pro or one of the anglers that have a bigger unit. They'll give you a better recommendation versus someone that has like a smaller unit that's only pulling 1.3 amps. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna give you the wrong information pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. You go from
Yeah.
a 9-inch screen, you go, they have the what, 7-inch screens, 9-inch
Yeah.
screens, and 10-inch screens, and depending on which brand, all the brands usually for the most part will draw.
All right. We have a little connection problem here. So hopefully Rolando will hop back on. But we're almost done with the podcast episode. We'll see if he could hop back on. Let's see. Might have to text him.
Oh,
Oh, you're back on.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Both of them went out. So,
Okay, sweet.
like I was saying, yeah, you got to pay attention to that amp draw, and
Yeah.
just know that 60 amps will get you your 10-inch screens and your
Black box.
black box
Yeah.
operating the 8 hours that you need of a tournament. You know.
Right. Anywhere from 60 to 80, you're good enough
Yeah.
for a black box and live scope for a 10-inch. But like there's the new 93 SV UHD2s that are not that are also pulling the same amp draw as the 106 SV. So
Hmm.
like the guys that are getting the newer Garmins, and even though they're 9 inches, they're still drawing the same amount as a 10-inch
Yeah.
draw. So got to be careful
And I
with
and
that.
I will tell you that I had a 93 SV and I went to the 106, and to me that it was kind of a big difference.
Mhm.
It doesn't sound like it, but it when you're looking when so when you're so when I practice, I have split screens, right? On the top I have my side scan,
Mhm.
and on the bottom sometimes I'll have my maps, and so you have different combos, right, that you use depending on what you're
Yeah.
doing. So I do side scan a lot, so I'll run my side scan. You need to run your side scan on the full length of your screen.
Right.
Otherwise you're not going to get the benefit from it, right? you're
Yeah. You're.
you're
Yeah.
you're only looking for the biggest obvious things that everybody else can find, which is
Mhm.
huge brush piles, right, or big trees.
Yeah.
So like if you're gonna scan and you're gonna use the you know the true potential of the side scan, you gotta run it a full across. You can't run it on one side up and down, because you're
Right.
not going to see the smallest things, the smallest details in there. The fish are very small, they look like rice grains. So
Mhm.
you need to have that full length of the screen.
Yeah.
So that
Have you
was
mastered it yet? The side scan with like the Tic Tacs?
Yeah, yeah, I
Like,
can tell whenever there's fish. It's hard to say which fish. You
yeah.
can't tell the species, but you can, if depending on how they're grouped up and things like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I've mastered it, but I'm pretty efficient with it. And
Okay.
and I would say that it has saved me plenty of times in tournaments where I'm running a bank and I'm always running side scan, and I
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, what is that? You know what I'm saying? And I'll mark it,
Stop. Mark
stop,
it. Stop.
and if you scope it, key fish comes off of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people think that the live scope is going to catch you more fish, but you got to learn how to use the other tools first for that to really shine for you, because you cannot
Yeah.
go searching for fish throughout the whole lake with live scope. Like
No,
it's
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 just too
so
big.
it's
The
yeah,
lakes are too big for that. If it's a 200-acre lake, sure, you could turn on live scope, leave it on for the whole day and find them, right?
yeah,
But if it's like 30,000 acres and you're trying to cover water to find biting big fish, you
yep.
can't find it with live scope fast.
There's no way. Yeah, it should be
Yeah.
too inefficient. So the key tool that we have as anglers is side scan.
Yeah.
Utilize your side scan, and you'll probably start doing better
Yeah.
because you're not relying on just running bank.
How what's the longest time you've had on side scan? That'll be the last question of tonight.
Hmm.
What is the longest time you've run side scan during a practice day? Like before you even had lines in, like you put a lure in.
Um, no, for the most part, I'm always kind of tossing things out, and
Yeah.
I'm casting while I'm side scanning.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Because I'm only moving like 3.5 miles per hour when I'm side scanning.
And you're
You
still
know?
fishing at the same time?
Yeah, but I'll be throwing a moving bait. You know what I'm saying? Like
Oh,
a
wow.
rattle trap or something. Um, because
That's
sometimes,
fast.
yeah, yeah, and I do tend to fish fast, but it depends what my goal is for that, right? Is if
Right.
I know if I'm in an area that I know that there's brush piles based on my research that I've done previously, right, from all
Mhm.
the forums or things that I've read online, and historical tournaments that I'm going through and documenting things, and then I'll run through the area and try to see if I can find things.
Yeah.
Like, you need to move at 3.5 miles per hour for your picture clarity to come good through to a side scan. If you're moving any
Right.
slower, your clarity of your picture is not going to be as good.
Right.
So 3.5 miles per hour, and then sometimes casting, but I'm not doing it like the boats do. Like the pros, when you see that they're on fish, they go out for the whole day sometimes, in 4 or 5 hours straight scanning
Yeah.
before they even put a line in the water.
Yeah.
That's not quite practical in a kayak, because you can't be motoring around everywhere, and not everything's good water, right?
Yeah.
I'm not fishing past 25 feet, for the
Mhm.
most part. So, um, most of the time I'll go out, I'll scan for like 25 minutes, and then
Mhm.
I'll soak a line somewhere in that area for a little bit, and then if I didn't find anything good, I keep moving, and I'm always side scanning, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Even during
Mhm.
tournament hours, I will have my side scan on if I'm moving, because if something pops up that I missed, or if I'm fishing new water, because the water that I had pre-fished or things is not working out, I want to see that sunken boat that got over there, or that big laydown that has that's 50-40 feet out
Or
to
a
my right.
tree stump or something, a tree stump that's off the bank in
Yep.
6 feet of water that has one key fish on
Fish.
it that
Yep.
you want to throw a jig, a drop shot, or jerk bait, whatever, that will kind of take you from either 3 fish to 4 fish, or
You
will
need the
take
cold.
you need that coal,
Yeah.
and it's sometimes it's like I thought about that actually last night. I was just like, maybe I'll side scan like for the next tournament for the whole entire time, and I'll side scan and every tree stump or every vertical cover that I find, just mark it with my 106 SV. Don't even fish it. Keep on going, mark, 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 mark.
Yep.
And then on my way back to the launch ramp, fish all those tree stumps
Yep.
on the way back with like a jig or spinner bait or jerk bait,
Yeah,
and,
no,
and
I
go
can
from there.
I can tell you plenty of times that I've gone by, I'm fishing around people, and I'm just like, oh man, they're just going over a lot of good stuff that they're just
Yeah.
not, that I've already created a milk run for myself on tournament day, that if that bank doesn't work out, I have something just right off of there.
Oh, really? So you'll mark, 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 mark,
Even
and
when
then
I'm in
you'll
Yeah, even in tournament hours, like I'll be fishing, and I know that I'm not, if I'm running a bank, because in the spring, you're mostly, fish are moving up to the bank. So
mm,
it's a lot easier to catch fish in the spring
yeah.
up on the bank. But sometimes those key fish are holding right back off of that. And
Right, you said like a secondary structure or
yep.
something, a
And
tree
so
branch or some sparse grass that's just growing a
and
little
if
bit.
yeah, and if there's no grass
Yeah.
and you happen to have, dude, there it could be loaded. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, or like a 20-incher could be sitting right on that
Right
sparse
spot.
grass,
Yep.
just waiting for warm temperatures to warm up, and then they're gonna
Yep.
move up on that rock and do their thing. I mean, I've had so many good times like that where it's like right out of a spawning flat, there's some sparse grass growing in the beginning of the spring, and you just live scoping that little sparse grass, and every single cast to them, like
Yep.
they'll bang it, you know.
No, yeah, for sure, man. So that's why pre-fishing is not fun.
Yeah,
It's not pre-fishing is not supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be one of
no,
those things where it's like, God, I killed it 130, 110 inches.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
no. I mean, if it happens, right,
yeah,
while you're doing your thing, like great, but I'm not smashing them like that
yeah,
um during practice. And I'm just, you're gonna not only are you hooking them, but someone else behind you is too.
yeah. Yeah, I
So
mean, if they're all 13 and 14 inchers, like have at it. But
yeah,
once you hook at 18, get the hell out.
yeah, yeah.
No more fishing.
Yeah, I think my rule is I always test an area and get two out of it because I don't want to know. I
Yeah.
want to make sure it's not a fluke, right? There wasn't
Yeah,
into
I keep
false.
on hearing that from pros all the time. Like for some of the best sticks, I just keep on hearing it. Don't just catch one, catch two just to make sure it's a pattern.
Yep.
Two's a pattern, one's a fluke or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then just move on and go search something else and have a lot of options, right? Don't
Yeah.
go out with the mentality of like, oh, I'm dialed in and I only need two rods because guess what? Caddo, everybody was catching them flipping and and then all of a sudden day two, it shut down a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and you go then what you were doing doesn't work and you don't have a lot of options with you. I always carry with the whatever the whatever my kayak allows me to carry. And
Yeah.
I try to downsize it, of course, to be comfortable, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, but
Awesome
that's
job, man. Awesome job this year. I'll be on the lookout for your year, you know.
yeah. Hopefully it continues, and I'm trying to carry the momentum, so we'll see how it works out.
You're the hot Z Pro teammate that I've seen. You know, I got my eyes on you. Yeah, yeah, that's momentum, man. Carry it out because you never know how long it could go, you know. If you
Yeah,
could carry it out to the end of the year, that's amazing. But just keep on riding it out, man. Best of luck to you this year. And
yeah,
hopefully I come across you one day. I know we're really far apart. We're like probably 20 hours apart,
yeah,
I think, easily.
yeah. No,
Uh
but if we ever head down that way, man, we definitely will look up my Z Pro teammates.
yeah, for sure. Are you going to lacrosse or what is it? Lacrosse or you're going to Possum Kingdom, right?
Going to Possum Kingdom. Yep. Yeah,
Dang.
lacrosse is what in Wisconsin or where is
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to that one.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's gonna be tough, but I'll be at Possum Kingdom for Bassmasters, and then if I can crack at the championship at it, because every year I've been able to make the Bassmasters championship,
Yeah.
by one of the events. This year, I don't know. I gotta get in that top,
Top
field,
5,
top
right?
five. Yep.
Yeah. I might fish Possum Kingdom. I don't know.
Well, if you
But
come down, let me know.
where who are you staying at home to fish
No.
it or are you
Uh-uh.
staying there?
No, I'm gonna. I actually need to book. We're gonna be booking a place to stay. So if you need a place to stay, I can send you details.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And if you don't mind, I have Matthew Brandon as well. Have you heard of
Uh-huh.
him? Matthew Brandon?
I'm not good with names. I'm better with
Yeah.
faces. So maybe I
He's on the
have.
Hobie team. He's on the Hobie team. He hangs out with some of the time with
Yeah,
Jeff
I think.
Little,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
the
I think.
outdoor power couple.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah.
It just the name it's hard for me to put it, but once I
Mhm.
see if I see his face, I'm like, I know who you're talking about. Especially if he's on the Hobie team, because I've met a few of the
Yeah.
guys that are on the Hobie teams.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So
That would be kind of cool to just gather a whole bunch of group of people. Maybe we
yeah,
can have a little roundabout fireplace type podcast
Yeah.
session going during the tournament.
No, that sounds
Yeah.
good. I'm gonna get, once that comes up, and I'll get an Airbnb, and usually we get about, 5 people in there, 4 to 5 people. So
Nice. Yes, for sure. Hit me up, man. I'm kind of eager, man. My homies over at the West Coast, that Damien Tao guy,
oh
he's
yeah,
he's a hammer. He got me a little bit more hungrier this year.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. Once you get on that row, it does make you hungry. So
Yeah, dude. And you're making me hungry too, man. I need to get at it, dude. Anyways, thanks again for hopping on the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And Rolando, keep on killing them, bro.
yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.